Hello everyone, it's Jamarl Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. Hope everyone is doing okay on this Friday. Let's see, let me check my sound. You always check your sound. You know, I love that term because there's a euphemistic quality to it. I mean, there are times where we can't hear one another, where somebody says something and it's like, I have no idea what you just told me, even though you said it passionately. Always check your sound, man. Sometimes you can communicate with somebody, you just have to communicate on their level. And their level is not necessarily a different or worse level, just a different level, if that makes sense. There's no point to anything, so there's no higher or lower. Look, so there's a story that came out that was sent to me on Twitter by... Who sent me this? Mick Resistance. Grandpa Dank. Oh, Grandpa Dank K. I was about to say Grandpa Dank. I thought that said Dank. Good looking out. Thank you very much. I'm a creature of Twitter. If you have stories that you see, that you like, that you think may strike my fancy, send them to me on Twitter. So, this one, which may actually be given a shout out to Trump. I don't know what just happened with my camera. Something's weird is going on with my camera. All right, let's do this. The United States in Syria stabilization funding cites more allied cash. Yeah. Applause. Tepid applause. That's what that gets. Because for most part, this is just a signal. Now, let me explain what I mean by signal. The United States, Donald Trump, has said on multiple occasions that he wants to be out of Syria. He's freaked people out in the stark way in which he said he's wanted to be out of Syria. I want to be out of Syria. Chemical weapon strike. That wasn't a chemical weapon strike. But it's clear that it seems that that really is what Trump is thinking. That really is what's on Trump's mind. I want my troops out of Syria. I want to get you guys out of Syria. You can't do it overnight, but it seems to be his intention and what he wants to do. What we have is a ton of money, millions of dollars, that is being frozen, that is not going to Syria and maybe credited back to the Treasury. At the end, I think it's like $300 million or $200 million. I need to check the number again. But at the end of the day, Trump is ceasing funding for the war effort. Now, this money is not stopping humanitarian needs or anything else, but for the most part, it's supposedly, you never fully know what goes on in this government, but supposedly stopping hundreds of millions of dollars going into, quote, Syrian projects. Let's take a look at this story, because I find this story interesting, and the story kind of even makes the point that it seems that Donald Trump doesn't want to be in Syria. And guess who flips out about this? Guess who's the party that flips out about not having more war? I don't even have to tell you, you already know. This is Reuters. I'm sorry, this is the AP News. The Trump administration is ending funding for the Syria stabilization project as it moves to extricate the United States from the conflict, citing increased contribution from anti-Islamic state coalition partners. That may or may not be true. It's Donald Trump. It may or may not be true. Hey, get those people out of Syria. Sir, we can't just get those people out overnight. Well, find a reason to get those people out of Syria. Yes, sir. Hey, there are other places that are going to support the funding of the United States so we can pull ourselves out. Is it true? Who knows? Maybe, maybe not. The State Department said it notified Congress on Friday that it would not spend some $230 million. It was a 2 and a 3. $230 million that had been planned for the Syria programs that would instead shift the money to other areas. Most of the money initially pledged by former Secretary of State Rex Tillerson in February had been on hold under review since he was fired in March. Said a small fraction of that amount was released in June. This part I want to get to. The funds will be redirected to support other key foreign policy priorities, said Neurt, who, along with the officials, rejected suggestions that the elimination of the funding showed diminishing U.S. interests in Syria. Now, I find this to be amazing that journalists think this way. And when we say, that these guys are hacks, they don't understand what we mean when we say they're hacks. Why is it a shocking thing that we want to get out of Syria? Why is that the odd perspective? Why wouldn't you want your forces out of Syria? This rah-rahing of the troops and everything else, but yeah, I want to keep them in a shitty spot. No! Get them out of that country. Get them back into our country. I don't want our people in those countries. I don't want us having, I don't want us doing attacks in Syria. That's not our country. I don't want our troops doing attacks in Syria. For that matter, I don't want our troops in these shitty war zones. We have these troops. We're spending all of this money. We're spending nearly $1 trillion on the military. And the media personnel and the people who are writing these articles are like skeptically citing that you're diminishing American power in Syria. No, we're getting our troops home. That's what we're doing. There's a difference in those things. So she has to say, no, we're not diminishing our interest in Syria at all. I don't understand why it's the prerogative of America to be in the business of each and every country. I don't understand that at all. I don't get it. And what makes it worse is that the media takes that prerogative, and the media, to some degree, magnifies that prerogative to the rest of the population. It's almost like a bad code. Officials reject suggestions that the elimination of funds show a diminishing U.S. interest in Syria. And let's keep going, because there's more. Neurt, along with David Satterfield, the acting Assistant Secretary of State for the Middle East, and Brett McGurk, the special envoy to anti-ISIS coalition, told reporters on a conference call that the United States will remain active in Syria until the Islamic State has been defeated. For all intents and purposes, the Islamic State has been defeated. They're being handled by the Russian and Syrian forces. The people who are protecting the Islamic State, or who were protecting the Islamic State, was the United States and Israel. Let's keep the shit real. Let's be honest. Let's be honest. This decision does not represent any lessening of the United States' commitment to our strategic goals in Syria, Neurt said. Still, the move was seen as a sign that the administration is heeding Trump's demand to end U.S. involvement in Syria and reduce its commitment there. Well, yeah, if the president says we want to lower our interest in that country, then yeah, the military is going to lower the interest in the country. Do you have civilian rule of the military or not? If you do, and that civilian just so happens to be a reality show host that had sex with a model, or had sex with a porn star, if that person says, I want to get out of this country, as a military commander, your job is to say, yes, sir, and scale down. If Donald Trump has expressed an interest to get out of the country, why is everybody shocked that the military is trying to get out of the country? I don't understand why the normal perspective is, yes, we want to stay in those countries eternally. It's insane. This is astonishingly short-sighted. Democrats on the House Foreign Affairs Committee tweeted. I love the fact that they tweeted this good. I'm glad you tweeted this. They called it a lack of U.S. leadership. This sounds like what Republicans said about Obama. And said it was undercutting U.S. interests in Syria and around the world. Do you remember when they said Obama was going on an apology tour? Do you remember that? Do you remember that? Oh! The world turns. The world turns. In a bid to reassure its partners in the coalition against ISIS, I guess it means, as well as opponents of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad, Pompeo appointed veteran diplomatic troubleshooter James Jeffrey to be special envoy to Syria, Neurt said. Jeffrey, former U.S. ambassador to Turkey, Iraq, and Albania, who also serves as deputy national security advisor to President George W. Bush, will hold the title Special Representative of Syrian Engagement. That's funny. Why not make him Thor? You can make him whatever name you want. Jeffrey, who retired at 2012, also holds the highest rank of the United States Foreign Service, Career Ambassador. That's what you need, a career ambassador. He will lead the United States efforts to reinvigorate long-stalled peace efforts known as the Green Process between Assad and the opposition and other countries with equities in Syria. That's fucking nonsense. That statement, it's nonsense. Does Associated Press know? Does Associated Press know? Explain to me this. Is the Associated Press the only one that's unaware that the United States, Qatar, the UK, and France were supporting the terrorists as it tried to overthrow their government? Are they aware of that? And if the Associated Press is aware of that, Fox News is aware of it. I mean, the weapons were ending up in the hands of the terrorists. We gave the terrorists a way out of the country because they were so terrified of staying there, clearly because the population wasn't going to accept them anymore. Are they aware? I guess what I'm getting at is they're saying that line that the United States is going to assist in the peace process, as if the United States wasn't intrinsic to the war process. That's fucking nonsense. I hate reading this stuff. It's as if the opinions that they have on this is without any context. Pompeo, the United States being part of the peace process, the United States was part of the process that started the shit in the first place. Yes, you might have had people starting with a real natural conflict, meaning people were aggrieved with their government. Fair enough. But let's be honest and say that that's not what it is now, or at the very least, that's not what it became. It became something where other fighters from various countries were going into that country, provoking chaos. And we were supporting that chaos with this idea of taking Assad out of that seat without wanting to commit the forces where your public can see that you were actually involved in a military conflict. Does Associated Press know that? And if the Associated Press knows that, why doesn't Associated Press say that under that line? Why doesn't it say that under that line? Why doesn't it say it in more explicit and vulgar terms so the person who's reading it knows that we were intrinsic into the conflict taking place in the first place, that it wasn't fully a civil war, it was imperial powers trying to take down a sovereign nation? And by the way, me saying that doesn't necessarily say that Bashar al-Assad was a good guy. It has nothing to do with whether or not he was a good guy. It's everything with whether or not I want my country, my tax dollars, committed to knocking down countries. My distaste for Donald Trump has been clear. It's been very clear. By the same token, our presence in that country is incomprehensibly illegal. We shouldn't be there. And if Donald Trump is scaling down in that country, tepid applause. No, they can't necessarily say that we're pulling him out completely, but dropping the money in the country may be a prelude to a slow pullout. Without, believe it or not, Democrats freaking out that the president is showing a lack of leadership, or that the president is capitulating to Assad, even though we are literally in somebody else's country. This is the last part. That left $193.4 million in limbo that would have been able to be returned to the Treasury Department on September 30th at the end of the budget year if it had remained unspent. Last month, the United States helped to organize the evacuation of the Israel, the White Helmet workers from Syria's south, where Assad Russian-backed forces launched a new offensive despite de-escalation agreement between Washington and Moscow. It was a de-escalation between Washington and Moscow. Yes, the country belongs to Syria. Of course, Syria can launch an offensive to take back their country because it's their country. The de-escalation agreement is between Moscow and the United States. There's a difference in those things. All right. This one wasn't meant to be long. I just saw this. I love this article, so I thought I was going to do this article. All right. Jamal needs a pitchfork and a weed hanging hanging out of his mouth today. A pitchfork and a weed? A what? And imperial rule is also about control of the many and the resources, and always, yeah. The Golan Heights is oil rich. It's full of oil. We aren't going to stop fucking with Syria. The nature of war is advancing withdrawal cycles. Yeah, so what I think is going to happen is they're probably going to remain, they're going to probably do what they did in Iraq, or at least try to. But the difference here is their coup didn't work, Garden. That's the difference. The coup didn't work. In Iraq, they were able to take down the government. In Libya, they were able to take down the government. In Syria, they were not able to take down the government. They were not able to take down the government. Also, Russia is now a regional power. I don't know, Guard. This seems like a different environment. It seems like a different environment. The United States failed in the coup in Syria, and potentially they failed in the soft coup in Nicaragua. So, Iraq was a client state. Still, so what? I missed the point. Iraq might have been a client. Iraq was partially a client state. Iraq wasn't completely a client state. And by the way, if they were a client state, they wouldn't necessarily have needed a war. We bombed them for years before overthrowing the government. Okay. I guess what I'm saying is, certainly you recognize that there's a difference between Syria, in this case, and Iraq. In one case, the United States took them down entirely. In the other case, the United States failed. And you have another power who's essentially lended support, where you had no power, lended support to Iraq. This is a different environment. Saddam was installed by the CIA. It's not that specific. Like, I know what you're talking about, the GB. The United States supported the Ba'ath Party. The gentleman who was there before, I can't think of his name, he was more egalitarian, and he wanted this kind of an egalitarian system, including with the oil. They didn't like that. They did not like that. All right, I'm going to end this one. I don't want this one to go too long. And it was an article I just kind of stumbled across. If you guys enjoyed the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe. Of course, you can always support the patron. Tepid applause for Trump if he goes through with more than just the token pull-up. Stay tuned. We'll see. Garneau says it's not going to happen. I partially agree with Garneau. I think the United States is going to want to remain at some level of striking distance and keeping certain bases in, even if they pull back to a certain extent. But we'll see. I suspect Bashar al-Assad is going to want to take his territory back. I don't know how that goes. I don't think this is the same thing as Iraq. But we'll see. We'll see. Bashar al-Assad said he's taking back all of Syria. So that is going to run into whatever this is. I got to be honest. Syria is not Iraq. So I disagree with you, Guard. We've been fucking with Syria for decades and won't stop. I don't think they'll stop fucking with them. But this large-scale, literal taking down of the government, yeah, I think on that they lost. I think they lost. Unless, they come up with some new offensive, or, oh, we have a new chemical weapons strike and now we need to do something else. The thing is, the terrorists have, for the most part, lost. The attempt that they were using was essentially throwing a brick against the wall with those terrorists. They thought that they could use the terrorists to do it. They lost. Now, do they come up with something else? Maybe. But this very specific attempt to take down Bashar al-Assad lost. And again, doesn't mean Bashar al-Assad is a huggable guy. If the people of Syria want to take down Bashar, let them do it. I don't want to be a part of it. So, I will end this. Alright, guys. If you enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe. You can always support the patron. I was about to say super chat, but they demonetized the entire channel, so you can't give through super chat. Oh, by the way, you can give through the link. I always remind people of that because super chat is gone. That's not a push. That's just a heads up for future videos. All right, guys. You all have a good one, and I will likely see you in a few minutes. Yeah, I'll likely see you in a few minutes. I have another video that I want to do. Thanks, everyone.